All right, everybody, it's time for a new week in our class. February 20th. How did that creep up on us so quickly? Anyway, the objective for this week is to use various current digital tools to support online asynchronous interaction. All right, so you have various current digital tools that can help support, well, discussions or any kind of asynchronous interaction that happens when meaning that it happens when maybe not everyone has to be there at the same time, same place. So anyway, we have a few chapters in the textbook and some other reading. So chapters 8, 12, and 13 on discussion forums, wikis, and microblogs that you'll be reading about this week. And we are talking about discussing and microblogging online, communicating online, kind of an interesting topic. But it's been around for a long time now. It's as old as the internet is, basically. Communication through text and through online means. You'll also be reading about best practices for discussion boards, and this will help you to prepare for the upcoming assignment, which I'll talk about in a minute, and a few other articles that talk about Twitter and learning and discussion board practices as well. And then there are some presentations to help you get ready to use a discussion type tool. So you can set up a discussion in D2L, you can set up and use Edmodo or Twitter, and just kind of watch those, make sure you understand how to do those, and you can refer back to those as you do the assignment that will be due next week. This week, though, your discussion really is to think about the most prolific and popular microblogging tool currently available, Twitter. And so for the discussion this week, I want you to imagine the possibilities for learners using Twitter as a learning tool. Come up with a project or assignment in which learners are supposed to post tweets on Twitter. This would be more of a high school level thing, obviously. You probably wouldn't have as many students who are younger on Twitter. But keep in mind the 140 character limit on Twitter and try to see this as a feature rather than a limitation. So think about what the assignment would include. What types of things might a student post? Maybe there's a sample post you could share in the discussion for this week. What would that look like if students were supposed to post on Twitter? And I'll give you an example of this kind of a thing as we look at a project called History, and I might have shared this with you before. History is a Twitter. Oh, let me go back. That's the wrong site here. It's actually right here, the history about. So we have reenactments that happen on Twitter. They reenact a historical event, such as the Gettysburg Battle or the Cuban Missile Crisis. And let's have a look at the reenactment archives from the Cuban Missile Crisis. Oh, that's not showing up. Let's see if the Twitter archives works for it. All right, so we have a person. Each student gets to become a person who had something to do with the historical event. So Robert McNamara, for instance. We have other people, I guess it's mostly Robert, the 1962 media. And other people have tweeted what's happening, Adlai Stevenson. So we have a bunch of different characters that have experienced this thing. They're historical people from the past who are real. And what they're supposed to do is they reenact the actual activity, such as the Cuban Missile Crisis that happened years ago. And they need to tweet about that activity. So this one says, once again, the power of American democracy has been demonstrated to the world. America, the land of the free and the home of the brave. If we look earlier during the crisis, we have a blockade continues. However, JFK and Nikita Khrushchev discuss the plan. U.S. might suspend its blockade 2 to 3 weeks while the Soviet Union stops shipping. Again, it's only 140 characters, so you have to really fit things in there. So it's kind of an interesting idea where students just post as if they were a character from the past, and they basically do it live in that, they figure out these are the days of the Cuban Missile Crisis. It happened over, I don't know how many days this happened. It happened over 2 days, let's pretend. And here's what the people might have posted during those 2 days, and here's the time we're going to start, and here's the time we'll end. All right, go. And the students get on there and they tweet about the different elements. And of course, beforehand, they might be prepared with some things that they want to share. And obviously they've done a lot of research in order to make this happen on Twitter. So that's just one example of a Twitter type experience that can be educational, despite the micro-blogging nature of Twitter, where you can only post a little bit. So that gives you an overview of the activities for this week. Just as we talk about this idea of discussions and microblogging, it's kind of interesting to think about how the internet has changed communicating with technologies, or how it's changed communication. In the past, we've had face-to-face type communications, as in this picture, and that was the only way to really communicate. And there are some advantages and disadvantages to this, right? You have advantages where you can see body language, you can understand whether somebody's joking or not, or what kinds of tone they have with their language. There's a lot that we pick up that we don't realize from a face-to-face conversation. But there are some disadvantages too. There's no kind of record of this conversation unless someone takes notes or records it. There's no kind of record to be reviewed later. And you don't have a chance to really think about what you want to say for however much time you need in order to think about it. And so that's what this kind of communication does, and this is a new way of communicating that we've evolved toward with the internet and the ability to discuss on the internet. So it's an opportunity really to share some comments and some ideas with each other asynchronously, and it's an opportunity to communicate online in a different way. And what this does afford is that it allows us to have a record of each communication as well. Whenever we post on a discussion board, there's a permanent record of that. Well, maybe not permanent, but there's a record of it, a lasting one. And we also have the opportunity for those introverts among us to think about things before we post them and to really consider what we say. Maybe some of us aren't good about thinking on our feet when we want to post something or when we want to say something. And I oftentimes think of the right thing to say after the situation has already passed, right? And so it's nice to be able to think about something first and then communicate it on a discussion board when we have all of our thoughts in line. So that's just a way to think about that. The discussions that we were going to be talking about this in the next week or two. As we look forward, though, next week there is an assignment due, so you'll be learning more about this, but there is a discussion assignment, and you'll want to gear up for this week. As you watch the presentations about Twitter, Edmodo, and D2L, you have learned about some tools for online discussions as well as microblogging. Now you need to set up a discussion online with Edmodo or another discussion tool. And that's Google Plus Hangouts would work, Facebook, or another discussion tool that you have access to in an LMS or online. And choose a target group of learners and create a good discussion question or topic for this group. Plan to follow best practices for hosting a discussion that you have learned in this class. And then you are to engage at least 2 people in the discussion topic or question for about a week's time. So that means this is due March 4th, so you kind of have to get started on Monday next week. That's why you have to be geared in on this. It might be good to set it up this week as you're learning about the different tools, and then prepare to start the discussion early Monday next week. Let's see, there are main posts and replies from each person, so you need to make sure that by the end there are those, and that you also participate in the discussion. And then you're just going to have a paper as you submit that you submit to me that includes these items. Provide the link to the discussion so that it can be viewed online. Describe your discussion question or topic. Describe the people who participated in the discussion, and it could be students from this class. It could be your own students if you're a teacher, or it could be friends of yours. Describe the best practices, the discussion best practices that you followed. So again, as you read this week's content, you might want to look at those best practices that they suggest there and make sure you follow those. And then what about your discussion went particularly well, and what would you improve for next time? So include a paper that writes up basically your experience with this. That's not due till March 4th. But again, you need to prepare for it this week so that you're ready to do the assignment in the time frame that it requires, so you can have a discussion over about a week's time. Monday through Saturday should be enough time, and maybe even Tuesday through Saturday if you're a little bit later getting geared up on this. So that'd be February 28th through March 4th. Should give you enough time to do a good discussion with people. But make sure you know about that and are geared up for that for this week. Okay, well, I think that's about all for this week, February 20th through the 25th, on discussions and microblogging. Have a great week.